Everyone's favorite washed-up governor, Kristi Noem, was speaking to Sean Hannity about Tim Walz being selected as Harris's running mate, and she said a lot of things that I think are worth discussing. So I'll play some of it, and I'll give my commentary.
Joining us now is the governor of South Dakota. Kristi Noem is with us. Governor, do you happen to know Walz? I mean, I figure you might have run into him at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. We served in Congress together, so I knew him very well. We worked on a couple pieces of legislation at the time, but when we both ran for governor the same year and both got elected governor, boy, he dramatically changed. He turned into a radical. I think his true colors came out quite a bit in what he did in Minnesota. And listen, he's dangerous. He's dangerous for this country. We border Minnesota, and there could not be two completely different stories of the consequences of leadership on their people. We have literally had thousands of people leave Minnesota and move to South Dakota to escape the consequences of his decisions. And so, they luckily had a place they could go where life could be better and they'd get away from the mandates and the taxes and the regulation and losing their freedoms. If we let Walz and Harris into the White House, we can't leave America and find anywhere better. There's nowhere else to go. So I hope people really, truly do find out the truth about the extremism of the Walz and Harris ticket.
Well, it's not going to come from the state-run media mob because they're in full protection mode and totally complicit and the biggest donors to the Kamala Harris and Tim Walz campaign. But I do believe that if America becomes very familiar with how radical, extreme, and dangerous their views and their policies are, I don't think that they have a shot at winning. People are asking me if they're getting nervous about the race. And I'm like, no, not yet. I think there's a time and a place for it. Most people tend to historically get engaged after Labor Day. And I think a lot of people are watching on the periphery. I think I'm not sure they understand yet completely what the positions that both of them have taken on the issue of law and order, on immigration, on energy, on the economy, on foreign policy. I mean, these clips that we've unearthed about Kamala Harris, we need the courage to stop saying radical Islamic terrorism. Well, who attacked us on 9/11/01? Who attacked Israel October 7th? We need to stop, have the courage not to say illegal alien. Well, if you enter the country illegally, what should we call you? That's an official government term, for crying out loud. But that's pretty extreme. And then free health care, we reward you for your law breaking. And we use taxpayer dollars to do it. What a great country that is.
Yeah, it's interesting that they look at the taxpayers as someone who's somebody else other than the people who live here, that the taxpayers will fund all of their extreme policies, not just, free college tuition, but free health care and sanctuary cities. And, everything is more taxes, more regulation. And the thing that's interesting about Governor Walz is he actually did all of these things. Harris will try to pass the blame off onto Biden or the previous administration and try to remake herself. There is real decisions that Governor Walz made and things that he said in Minnesota that Americans need to know about. He took away their freedoms. He mandated vaccines and mandated masks, even outdoors. He said that people had to shut down their businesses. They couldn't go to church, that they couldn't have gatherings. They couldn't exercise their constitutional right of freedom of assembly. And it had devastating consequences on their economy. And then he wrapped himself all up in the Green New Deal and mandated electric vehicles and compliance at the state level that they can't possibly meet without crashing their own economy. And just because he's sold out to the socialist agenda. So he is really not proven that he has beholden to any of the values that made this country great. And that's what Americans need to be reminded about is it matters who you put in that White House for their day-to-day lives. And we need to keep talking about the economy, about the border, and about law and order. And on those issues, every single day, Trump and Vance win those issues by their policies, helping American families be stronger and do better.
I think it's the biggest choice election in our lifetime. I think America, frankly, is at an inflection point, a tipping point. We can't afford the Green New Deal. It'll bankrupt the country. We can't afford open borders. We had a report this week that they let 99 known individuals with terror ties free into the country and don't know where they are. We know that they're taking him people unvetted from places like Iran and Syria and Egypt and Afghanistan and Uzbekistan and Venezuela and China and Russia. I mean, it's only a matter of when, not if, this country's going to get hit. We already are losing lives every day. I would argue very strongly, and I've said it many times, and I'll keep saying it, is that Joe Biden, Kamala Harris have blood on their hands, and yet they want to continue the policies. Meanwhile, innocent Americans are dying and being victims of brutally violent crimes. I don't get it. Can you explain that to me?
No, they have a track record of giving people who break the law more rights and more place in our cities and our communities than citizens who get up every day and work hard and take care of their children and follow the law and respect, law enforcement and leadership. They have a track record that we need to remind people of. I think that so many people right now don't remember how ugly and dark it got back in 2020, 2021. They're feeling it in their pocketbooks, too, but they also need to remember what our cities looked like and how they were tearing down our statues and our monuments and degrading our entire history of this country. And that's what Harris and Walz have stood for. They fought for. They have been, I think, enemies of America and what we stand for in the actions that they've taken. And, boy, it's going to... You talk about it being a consequential election. It is the most consequential election because we've never had such a left-wing ticket from the Democratic Party. I mean, think of the state of the Democratic Party when these are the two individuals that they choose to be their leaders. Walz has said, his quote is, "One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness." What?
Oh, by the way, and Kamala Harris said, he did say those exact words, and Kamala said, the high price of energy is just the cost of being in a democracy. And I'm like, oh, okay. Tell that to the families that can barely make ends meet or can't make ends meet and are putting bare necessities on credit cards.
That's exactly right. Walz also has said he's very happy to be labeled as a big government liberal. Well, a big government liberal is someone who says the government needs to make all your decisions for you and control your money and control your future instead of you yourself. And that's not the American dream. That's not it at all. And he has completely lost sight of that. And Harris picked him as the guy that she wants to run and run this country with. That's a dangerous ticket right there. And I hope we all wake up to it.
Well, I hope we do as well. Governor, we appreciate you being with us. Governor Kristi Noem, South Dakota. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sean.
We live in such a prominent era of misinformation and just things being twisted and spun to what they are not, that I can completely understand where a lot of older people who might turn on Fox will hear the things that come out of Noem or in more cases Hannity's mouth and believe, oh yeah, well I guess this must be true. Democrats really are these radical characters. Oh man. But there should be some level of quality control in terms of just, okay, this is not true. You are lying about this. This is not correct. This person's never said that. As far as I can tell, and I tried to look it up, I haven't been able to find any data that supports Noem's claim that a bunch of Minnesotans are fleeing to South Dakota. I don't see that anywhere. I'm not going to criticize Walz for trying to keep the people of his state safe during the worst pandemic in over 100 years. And I just... It's sad that like you had this disease that was just going around slaughtering people, and they politicized it. They turned it into this thing where, oh, you want people to be protected by staying at home and not going out and catching and spreading this disease in these large social gatherings. You are against freedom. It's like, no, I literally just am following, if I'm the governor, as Walz was, guidelines directed by health professionals. I mean, I'm not, it's just, it's insane because what they're trying to do is attach listening to accredited doctors about how to deal with and quarantine from this disease with this idea of the liberal oversteps of government into our life. It's really gross and gross and dumb. I was going to say but it is dumb as well. When you get over to some more of her comments where she says that, And this is really just a hodgepodge of them throwing everything at these people. At one point, Noam says that uh, Walz supports the Green New Deal. I looked it up. I don't see anywhere where Walz has ever talked about the Green New Deal. And really, that comes down to the fact that Walz was elected governor right around the time that AOC and the rest of the squad were taking office. So it just wasn't a thing that was proposed while he was in Congress. It's not something that most governors are going to talk about. And my favorite part is when Hannity has the nerve to mention how Democrats want to give free health care to illegal immigrants. I've seen nothing, no one supporting that. And he talks about how, like, this is this big strain on Americans. I said, if you're so concerned about Americans, because they also mention Noam, like, free college, and she's mentioning this in the context of having Americans pay that for illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants, whatever. But my thing is, if you guys are so concerned about the plight of regular old Americans, right? People who are, as you say, struggling, and they at the end of the clips, Hannity mentions that people even have to like put use credit cards for basic expenses, and things are very expensive now, and I've talked about that as well. But if you're so concerned about the plight of regular Americans, why don't you have a conversation about these insane tuition costs, where people have to take out loans just to go to school for a couple of years, and then hope when they get the piece of paper that it's able to save the day and make back what it cost. If they're so worried about Americans paying for healthcare, why don't you support a single payer system like Denmark or Sweden? But remember, these are the same people that believe if you take healthcare and stop it from being privatized by these screwed up for-profit companies, that's socialism. Government-run healthcare. They use all these stupid terms. They can't tell us what's wrong with any of what we're proposing. But no, Noam's commentary is interesting because, like, for example, I haven't seen DeSantis talk about Walz. I haven't seen really any other Republican governor. She's done, I think, at least 2 or 3 different interviews or press junkets with, I guess, sound bites talking about him. So I guess after not being able to make it as Trump's VP, thanks to her stupid, I got rid of my dog in the most brutal way book excerpt, she's now trying to find a way to carve out a lane for herself in this general election. So this lame duck governor, right? She tried to attack the now lame duck president, and that doesn't work. She's moved it over to his VP, and she's going to use the fact that she was elected at the same time as the running mate for that VP, Walz, to criticize him in the most generic ways. They really said this is the most radical ticket the United States has ever seen. And the sad part is, as we've discussed before, anyone that actually pays attention to this stuff and knows what they're talking about knows that Harris is not some Bernie Sanders acolyte who is going to enact or attempt to enact single payer and the Green New Deal and try to abolish private health insurance. It's like this is a lady who is a chameleon. She is someone that, similarly to Biden, right, has taken positions from all different types of walks of life, and I even would say similar to Hillary in that respect. And even though she has been like leaning more in a progressive direction, which is mostly to just keep her career going, there's no reason to believe she's going to turn into this ardent Bernie-crat or New Dealer once if she's able to win the presidency. Like it's just such a, I guess what's funny is like they're making a person who was pretty moderate throughout their entire career. Oh, she had the most liberal voting record as senator. It's like, yeah, that still is, like, again, the backdrop is that Harris's whole time as senator was planning to run for president. So every vote was calculated to look this way, appeal to the people that might like Sanders or Warren more than her, and then, do whatever you do after you get to the White House, or if you get to the White House. It's not a good measuring stick for like what her actual positions are. But they're really pretending and like going full in on this fantasy of the radical left-wingers, the radical left wing ticket, the most radical in the country. And the sad part is, watch it be 4 years from now, 8 years from now, 12 years from now. They're going to be saying this about every single Democratic ticket until the end of time. Because if you like literally, that's how they attack Democrats. You're radical. But then the people who want to cut social programs to help the poor, they're normal. The lady that's been banned from, I think, an eighth of her state over there in South Dakota by all those different tribes that she was pissing off, that's not radical. That's totally normal.